thank you everybody for coming out. We're back after our month's break. Hope the exams weren't too much for you and you can unwind a bit. So we're starting off again with our news roundup. We're bringing the discussion back. Our middle segment is going to be dedicated to social engineering, a pretty important topic. And then after our short break, we'll be joined by Adam to talk about positions in the government of Canada for students and full-time work. Once I finish this, we'll get into the news. So we got one more week for exec applications. We've already started interviewing some of you. That's been really enjoyable. We got a few more interviews to do. If you're still on the fence, I don't know what I have left to say, but definitely join. It's a way to get your name out there, get co-op people to really consider you more. It's a club which gets recognized. I know a lot of people have been concerned about the time commitment. The time commitment, it's not too much, honestly. You know, at the end of the day, we're all students and we're all trying to help each other out on the exec team. A lot of us also work jobs on the side. So I definitely still recommend doing it, even if you are concerned about the time commitment. You can always reach out to me if you want to talk more about that. But once again, please apply. I look forward to seeing your applications. So with that, we're ready for the news roundup. Jackson with a Y, you can take it away.
Thank you, Jack. Hello, everyone. In today's news, I will be discussing reports on a new ransom variant called Royal that has been discovered by cybersecurity researchers. The Royal ransomware is a fileless malware that is able to bypass detection by traditional antivirus software and is distributed through phishing emails. Once a victim's computer is infected, Royal encrypts the files on the device and demands a ransom payment in exchange for the decryption key. The ransom note includes a unique ID and an email address for the victim to contact the attackers. Researchers have noted that it specifically targets a broad range of critical infrastructure sectors, which include manufacturing, communication, healthcare, and the public care sector. Royal ransomware operators employ multiple techniques to gain initial access to their target networks, like using RDP, phishing attacks, and public-facing applications. According to researchers, Royal ransomware has also been found to move laterally with the help of tools such as AnyDesk and Logmin. Royal is renowned for its ability to quickly adapt to its environment and was discovered to target both Windows and Linux operating systems, which shows attackers are evolving their tactics to expand the scope of their attacks. Now I'll pass it to Jess for the next part of the news segment.
Okay, hello everybody. So my article for today is Emotet malware attacks return after 3-month break. So for those who don't know, Emotet is a malware that spreads, and their primary method of initial access is through Word documents with malicious VBA macros or email attachments. So Emotet is a sophisticated banking Trojan that has been in circulation since 2014 and is known for its ability to evade detection and spread quickly. The malware was disrupted by a coordinated international law enforcement operation in 2021 January, and this resulted in the seizure of infrastructure used by the Emotet gang. Security experts warned that Emotet's operators are likely to return, and apparently that prediction has come true. And recently, new waves of attacks have been spreading through spam emails containing malicious Word documents or links to download them. Once Emotet infects a computer, it can download additional malware or ransomware, steal sensitive information, and hijack the victim's email account to spread further. It's often used as a first-stage malware dropper by criminal gangs, who then use the access it provides to carry out more targeted attacks. To avoid falling victim to Emotet attacks, users are advised to be wary of unsolicited emails, avoid downloading email attachments, or clicking links from unknown sources, and keeping their software up to date. And the next article is from Tommy, who couldn't make it today. His article is experts identify fully featured info stealer and Trojan and Python package on Pipey. A malicious Python package uploaded to the Python package index has been found to contain a fully featured information stealer and remote access Trojan. The package named Colorful was identified by Kroll's cyber threat intelligence team, with the company calling the malware colorblind. Colorful, like other rogue Python modules discovered in recent months, conceal its malicious code in the setup script, which points to a zip archive payload hosted on Discord. For Colorful to establish remote control, the malware starts a Flask web application, which makes it accessible to the internet through Cloudflare's reverse tunnel utility Cloudflare, bypassing any inbound firewall rules. The Trojan is feature-rich and is capable of gathering passwords, terminating applications, taking screenshots, logging keystrokes, opening arbitrary web pages on the browser, executing commands, capturing crypto wallet data, and even snooping on the victims through their webcam. The next portion is discussions with Narrow, Singh, and Patrick.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Singh. This is Patrick. And today we're going to be talking about electronic health records in healthcare and in relation to cybersecurity. So the news story related to that is a recent cyber attack in Florida's health network had forced some organizations to basically send emergency patients to other facilities, cancel some non-emergency related surgeries, and only take level 1 acute emergencies because their entire systems had to shut down. In a related story, nearly 270,000 patient records in Louisiana were accessed in an attempted ransomware attack on a healthcare system back in October of 2022. So we know that those cases like that are increasing. In January, the FBI shut down the computer infrastructure of a notorious ransomware gang that had attacked multiple U.S. hospitals over the last couple of years. Staff had been unable to access the one in Florida. Staff had been unable to access digital patient records and lab results because of the necessary shutdown. The effects of shutting down the hospital's network can last anywhere from weeks to months and could affect all the recently affected medical data. And nearly all hospitals today rely on the internet for connectivity with vendors, remote critical offices like radiology, pharmacy, medical device maintenance, patient document scanning, and especially payment processing.
Electronic health records and cybersecurity centralize patient information, providing patients direct access to their own up-to-date medical records, streamlining information among various healthcare facilities connected to the network and those outside. AI and machine learning could help improve healthcare using consolidated and synchronized information. Examples of this can be processing a diagnosis much faster. In Ontario, the Personal Health Protection Act, or the PHIPA, that extends the EHR information where your rights to have access to and change your own records are highly regulated for privacy. Patient access still not widely available, but in the process of being rolled out to major networks, the Hamilton Health Science and SickKids and etc. Since the pandemic, increased cyber attacks by 45% in the healthcare industry since it started.
So I just want to do like a really quick poll. Does anyone here have access to their electronic health records? Like either through an app or they can go log in on their website to see their health information? No, nobody yet. Well, they're rolling it out, and I had the privilege of working with Hamilton Health Sciences as they rolled out their electronic health record system last year. It was really cool to see because patients basically can either go to their website, Hamilton Health Sciences, and log in and access their specific health records and see their health conditions and things like that get synced across the network. And so it's a really convenient thing to have because previously you would have to, go to your doctor's office, and inquire about it, and get like a paper copy and everything. So I bring that up because I wanted to ask, what kind of potential risks do you think are associated with electronic health records? how do you think they could be mitigated? Any thoughts? Yes.
Well, it'd be less risky because you're backing things up, so you can have backups which will mitigate risk, but at the same time, basically data theft can potentially be easier because if a system is compromised and there's a whole bunch of information on it, you can just mass export a bunch of data.
That's true. Yeah.
For the accounts for health services, is that like Ontario wide or just Hamilton?
The one that I worked with was specifically Hamilton Health Sciences, so like McMaster, St. Joe's, like the ones that are actually in that area. But they also they had like a feature where they can contact other networks and transfer records from other networks. Because I worked with people who also worked at Sick Kids who had a similar system, but it wasn't exactly connected to just automatically sync. But it was really cool to see like how updated it was. But there was definitely a lot of kinks that they needed to work out. It took a couple months, but they brought in like a huge team to do all that. Any other thoughts about electronic health records?
I guess if, as you said, patients are accessing their health information from their phones,
Yeah.
other personal devices, that just kind of increases the surface you gotta be concerned about when working on improving your security posture.
Yes, people leave their phones behind all the time, don't always protect their passwords and things like that. Yeah. Listen.
At least for the mitigation portion, which a lot of businesses still need to push, is two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
And not just over SMS, because there are still some issues with that, but
Yeah.
over an actual authenticator app over the code.
For sure. Anyone else? Yeah.
Have you guys heard of MyChart by any chance?
I haven't. No, I'm sorry.
No?
I
Sorry.
haven't.
MyChart's a colleague of mine had mentioned it, so it's actually one way where any of your lab results, whether it's blood tests, x-rays, you're actually able to connect your Ontario health card right now to it and access all that information online. So to answer the question, one risk that I find that would be interesting is from an insurance provider's point of view, if your information is compromised, whether or not they can permit you to have a higher insurance rate or not, or if you're forced to pay higher premiums.
Oh, yeah, that's really important. Anyone else? So next question.
Should there be a central database for all health records that connect all health regions for Ontario and Canada? Or is that too much of all eggs in one basket? Would separating into smaller networks of data be more secure?
So as it stands right now, it's basically the separation because each network has their own servers. But do you think it'd be a good idea to connect all the networks, have one regulating body, and just connect everything across Canada? Chris, you were saying?
No, because that would be like once a failure. So like if that thing gets hacked into, then all the data is just gone.
Right. So what if there was like one regulating body to watch over several networks or something like
It's
that?
probably better like if you have like one regulating body to look over like all the other networks. So then, because then like I guess like specific data could be on like obviously like specific servers and different servers instead of having central.
Yeah.
I think it would make more sense if you had like a kind of like a standardized process. Like if you had a framework or standard that each individual kind of area met.
Yeah.
Because then you can, like you said, where things weren't quite integrating, it took, I think you said 2 months for them to kind of start to work out the kinks. If you had a standard that everyone followed, then you're responsible for your own protection, but then transferring like patient files and information would be easier if there were standards, because then you just send it off and have some.
Yeah, following a standard would definitely help. Yeah. Any other thoughts? So, basically, we want to think about the future of EHR security, and as we discussed, it's pretty important to think ahead. What kind of emerging technologies that you're aware of or trends in IT could affect healthcare organizations and what they should be aware of? So, for example, like AI is becoming like a massive thing as of late, and it's obviously going to affect technology as a whole, all over the world. What kind of other things can you guys think of, or if you have any ideas on what AI could do to help?
AI, like people using AI to like diagnosing, like or checking the results from scans. I saw an article saying that AI has been shown to be significantly better at diagnosing breast cancer scans as either positive or negative than humans. So for things like that, you know, again, have a human kind of skim things over, but you know, if you have AI running through a whole bunch of different scans and then dumping them into a yes/no bin, if it's more efficient than humans, then that would be super.
Right. Yeah. It's like using AI to automatically drive a car is statistically safer than compared to humans, right? It's kind of a similar idea. What about in terms of security? What do you guys think?
Quantum computers.
Can you elaborate on that?
Quantum physics. Yeah, I mean, like, I know in our crypto class, like everyone wants to talk about quantum encryption. But yeah, I mean, it'll ruin our encryption systems, but I know there's also a lot of work being put into using quantum computers to secure infrastructure.
To do the security
So I
part.
guess it's
Yeah.
kind of more important that the healthcare organizations get to that first before bad actors.
And you could use the AI to check for something's quantum secure.
Right. Good point. Did I see a hand over here? No. Okay, cool. Good thoughts. So these are some of the suggestions that Fortinet had actually published a few years back regarding securing electronic health records. They want, they suggest at least, that organizations build a culture of security. You want to educate your employees on risk factors, on how to avoid, basically how to avoid them, follow protocols, especially when you're sharing information outside of your network. Do cyber threat assessments, either before, during, or not really after, but before or during. Will highlight any possible gaps in network protection and make sure the security program is effective. You want to implement secure access to ensure only the necessary parties have clearance and access to private data using effective identity and access management. Encryption is obviously important. You want to make sure that the data can't be intercepted, or if they get intercepted, that it can't really be read in transit. Internal firewalls can help segment and add layers of protection if attackers do get access to your database. Focusing on web application security. So if a patient has access to their records on a mobile phone or on a website, then it still is being monitored, basically, so that it doesn't get compromised. And then finally, endpoint protection provides visibility to all connected devices accessing the network. So anybody who's visiting and accessing that network should be, monitored properly, and anything else any kind of attack can be guarded against. Anybody have any other thoughts, or we're out of time? Okay.
All right, thank you, Sing and Patrick, for that segment. So if you've been attending the ISSessions sessions and watching the news segment, you should know social engineering. It's kind of a big deal. So that's why we got this middle segment dedicated. Meryl, is she in right now? Yeah, okay, I'm just gonna set everything up and I'll let you know when you're good to go. All right, now you're good to go. I can't hear her. Can you? Can you hear her? Check my output. Just 1 second now. Try again.
Oh, me? Can you hear me?
One sec, let me just raise the volume. Okay, try again.
Ready to go?
Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Okay. I just can't see the slides on my end, but
Let me just pull that up.
okay. Yep, so what is social engineering? Social engineering is any attack that uses human psychology to manipulate someone into performing an action or providing information, resulting in a security breach. Next slide, please. So the tactics used in social engineering have been around for a very long time and are probably as old as human communication itself. They've just been adapted to fit our modern world. The goal of these tactics are to build rapport or mutual trust with the target, and most social engineering attacks use the following methods, which are pretexting, OSINT, or creating a false sense of urgency. Pretexting. This is impersonating someone, for example, an authority figure. One of the most famous examples of someone who uses impersonation is Frank Abagnale, whose exploits were turned into a film adaptation called Catch Me If You Can. Abagnale successfully cashed $2.5 million in fraudulent checks, which he obtained by impersonating an airline pilot, a doctor, a lawyer, and more. He now currently works as a security consultant. The next tactic is using OSINT. This is gathering information about someone from publicly available resources to provide social proof that they are trustworthy. OSINT can be used to support other social engineering attacks. For example, the 2011 Financial Times breach occurred because the hacker group, Syrian Electronic Army, sent personalized phishing emails, otherwise called as spear phishing, to specific Financial Times employees, tricking them into giving up their credentials. And lastly, creating a false sense of urgency. So attackers want to bypass your critical thinking and get you to make decisions hastily. Creating a false sense of urgency is involved in many business email compromise or BEC cases in which executives at a company are tricked into transferring large amounts of money to an attacker. So this happened in 2019. Toyota lost $37 million when attackers persuaded a finance executive to change account information on an electronic funds transfer to one of their subsidiaries. So there's a lot of different types of social engineering attacks, but today we're going to focus on the two major ones, which are vishing and phishing. Then we'll take a look at how to prevent these types of attacks. So vishing. In a vishing attack, an attacker calls the target and speaks to them over the phone. Vishing requires some improvisation, and there is more room for mistakes because the attacker is interacting with the target in real time. However, a vishing attack can be incredibly quick and effective if it's successful. Next slide. So for example, how would you like to make $243,000 in one day? This is the amount lost by a UK-based energy firm in another business email compromise in 2019. The interesting part about this case is that the CEO of this firm thought he was speaking on the phone with his boss, who instructed him to pay this amount to an account apparently belonging to one of their Hungarian suppliers. The CEO said he recognized his boss's slight German accent and the melody of his voice over the phone. Fraud experts believe that the hackers use commercial voice-generating software to mimic his voice. This type of software can be purchased online, and given hours of voice recordings, could be trained to mimic any voice. This is also one of the first cybercrimes seen by European officials where the hackers clearly used AI.
Okay, thanks, Neryl. So just to elaborate a little bit more, I'm going to be talking a bit about phishing. It's a common cyber attack aimed at stealing or damaging sensitive data by deceiving people into revealing personal information like passwords and credit card numbers. It's sort of a more general term, and it includes things like email, which is the most common, as we spoke about, malware disguised as legit attachment, things like documents and audio and video files, spear phishing, which Nero mentioned is a target-specific method, whaling, which is a new concept to me. It's basically big fish targets like CEOs, celebrities, high-profile people. Smishing, which targets SMS or text messages, and vishing, as again Nero spoke about in terms of voice calls. And attackers often try to impersonate generally trustworthy companies. Companies you come to know like Google, UPS, post office, your bank, and so on. Attackers will manipulate channels that most people would believe are trustworthy forms of communication, like email, phone, maybe not so much phone anymore, and text. So again, it creates a sense of urgency. It emphasizes an importance of responding to a communication that appears to be time sensitive. It uses psychological tactics like exploiting fear and anxiety of victims, and have them make snap decisions. And oftentimes the damage is pretty much done before the victim even knows what's going on. Consequences include things like stolen money, fraudulent charges on credit cards, lost access to personal photos, videos, files, and even sensitive accounts like medical records. If at work, your employer could lose corporate funds, customer or coworker information, sensitive confidential files, and basically even damage your entire company's reputation.
Some prevention from these consequences and some red flags can be, like before opening email, always check the sender's email address because the display name may be deceptive or a fake. And these are more, the next four are based off more off companies rather than individuals. So use encryption to defend sensitive data. So encrypt your email files and data using strong encryption algorithms. Inform yourself and your workers on how to recognize unusual activity and how to report it, as well as about the standard social engineering strategies used by cybercriminals and by your company. Strong passwords and two-factor authentication can use powerful and unique passwords on all accounts to improve security. And to use a VPN to cover up your network privacy and disguise your network traffic, and to use a virtual private network, which VPN stands for. And these are more based off individual takes. So looking for mistakes based off spelling and grammar. Mistakes are classic signs of phishing emails, so they keep an eye out for them in messages. Mark anything that seems out of ordinary for evaluation. Use extra caution while clicking. Even if the email's content seems authentic, use extra caution before clicking any of the links, because it'll be a phishing attempt. Observe the salutation. If the email address says you see as a valued customer rather than by your name, it may be a phishing attempt. Be lookout and cautious. Review the signature. Carefully check the legitimacy of the content information that the email, like in the email's footer. It will always be given by the sender. And lastly, to avoid using scare tactic phishing emails. So frequently use scare tactics using the threat language like your account has been suspended. And lastly, any questions or comments? Any questions or personal experience worth sharing about a phishing attempt?
I'll give you an interesting example. So this is actually a case that I've seen in the field where what's ended up happening is another client department, if they have compromised by a group of threat actors, they have several emails, they're compromised, they're utilized by threat actors, and what they'll do, they won't use them for about a year or two. Wait that time, they come back and they actually use those compromised emails, started off as a new email thread to a targeted employee, and will actually create this sort of fantasy world that they've already communicated between back and forth using spoofed email addresses. So it's very convincing from an employee's point of view because they're more likely to click on links. So in some cases it's, hi, it's Deborah from accounting. Can you go get me $10 for a gift card for Sally? Her kid's sick or something.
Yeah, that's similar to my case because at my previous job we used to have our schedule based off an Excel spreadsheet. And so what they did is they used my employees' names as a phishing attempt, like, oh, look at the photos we took last Wednesday, and that never happened. And I kept on sending it off like different employers that I had, like my different coworkers that I worked with. And they still send it today, so it is what it is.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Oh.
An interesting experience?
Over there.
Would another method of prevention not be like kind of reach back out but through a different like communication medium? So like let's say they email you, you message them back on Teams, or if you have their phone number, you text them instead of emailing back.
Yeah.
How do you get like valid confirmation?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, that's sort of what I try to do under like workers and employees, trying to like that communication aspect to it.
Yeah, if
So-
it's legit, then you know. One tip I've heard with all the government scams that are going around is the best thing you can do is just directly contact them through a channel you trust, either through logging into your government account or calling the number that is on their website, or like a document that you've been given directly from them. Jess? No. Chris?
Yeah, so like I usually like receive calls like basically saying, yeah, like we're OSAP and all that stuff, so.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, sure. Yes.
Yeah, and you're like anxious about your loans, and so
Yeah.
you're just like, okay, I guess I have to talk to them.
Click this link.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Also another one, my girlfriend's mom, her HR got emailed from her email because her email got compromised somehow. And what they were doing was asking HR to send her paycheck to a new account, so she wants to transfer to this new account, and she
Yeah.
just didn't receive her paycheck for like a month.
Yeah.
And that's when kind of something's up. So,
Yeah.
I've heard of that happening to other people as well. I think that was kind of common.
Yeah.
Did that happen on Facebook and Google? Someone after me that basically did that.
I think that happened to Google, but I'm not sure about Facebook.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think I heard about Google too.
One thing that that happened that was kind of interesting. Everyone always kind of hears about how like old people are targeted,
Yeah.
but my grandmother got a phone call from allegedly me, her grandson, saying that I had been arrested with drugs in the vehicle and was
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
believable.
and basically that I needed money to get bailed out.
She didn't recognize your, what's the phone call?
Yeah, it was over the phone.
And she didn't recognize your voice.
The person said that they were that I was sick, but the thing that I thought was really interesting was that I believe they said they knew my father's name. They knew my grandmother was my grandmother. They knew my name. They knew my father's name, but they didn't know that he was my dad. So they had like 3 sets of names and knew the relationship between 2, but not kind of who my dad was. So in the story, they were saying that he was my friend, which is what actually kind of tipped my grandmother off.
Wow.
Also drugs, I'm innocent. But
So your grandmother knew better to know.
she ended up asking, she asked them what my last name was, and they said her last name, not mine. So if, like that was kind of a luck thing, where my grandmother, whatever, her last name is different than mine, but if it had been the same, like they knew her full name, they knew my first name, and they knew my father's first name.
But not
So I have no clue how they got all of that, like kind of like relevant but partial information.
Yeah.
But
Have you checked Have I Been Phoned?
I think so.
For her too. Any other comments? Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you, Singh, Patrick, and Neil for that segment. Thank you, everybody, for participating. So I'll switch back over to the PowerPoint. We're going to be taking our break for 5 minutes while we get set up. I'll throw the CCR code on screen for you. Mason, you got the link for the form, right? Okay, yeah. Mason will post that in chat. You can fill that out. Give yourself credit for coming out here tonight. And we'll be back in 5 minutes. So 7:41, we'll be ready with Adam for his talk. So until then, take it easy.